Commander Jake Morrison floated in the observation deck of Cerberus Prime, watching distant stars through the massive viewing window. The Deep Space Monitoring Station hung silently in the void between Mars and Jupiter, its sensors constantly scanning for any unusual activity in the galaxy. For 3 years, Jake had commanded this outpost, and most days brought nothing more than routine asteroid tracking and solar wind measurements. Today felt different. "Commander, you need to see this," called Lisa Grant from her communications console. Her voice carried an edge that made Jake push off from the window and drift toward the main control room. Lisa had been monitoring alien frequencies for 2 years, but she had never sounded this concerned. Jake anchored himself at her station and looked at the displays. Strange signals filled the screens, unlike anything they had recorded before. The patterns were clearly artificial, definitely not natural space phenomena. "When did these start coming in?" he asked. "About an hour ago." "They're coming from the Andromeda sector, but Jake, these aren't just random signals. Listen to this." Lisa activated the audio translation system. The computer had been working to decode the transmissions, and what emerged was a voice speaking in broken, desperate tones. "Warning, the harvest comes. Devourers wake from long sleep. Civilizations fall like leaves in cosmic wind. Must warn the sleeping giant. Time grows short." The voice faded into static, then another began, speaking in a different alien language that the computer struggled to translate. "Our world burns. The machines consume everything. Please hear us. The ancient protocols must activate. Find the Guardians before." Silence. Dr. Carl Banks drifted over from his xenobiology station, his face pale. "Jake, I've been monitoring these for the past 30 minutes. They're coming from at least 12 different star systems, and they're all saying similar things. Something about devourers, ancient machines, and warnings." Jake felt cold despite the station's heating. "Are these distress calls?" "I think so, but more than that. They keep mentioning something called the Sleeping Giant and Guardians, and—" "Jake, the signals are getting weaker. 3 of the transmission sources have gone completely silent in the last 20 minutes. Lisa's console erupted with new activity. Another signal came through, this one clearer than the others. The translation was almost perfect. "This is the last ship of the Altair Republic. Our fleet is destroyed, our worlds are gone. The Devourers take everything, convert it into more of themselves. We send this warning to any who can hear. The ancient enemy has returned." They move toward the outer rim. "Find the sleeping protectors. Awaken them before it is too late. Remember us. The signal cut to empty static. The control room fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Jake stared at the displays, trying to process what they had just heard. Entire civilizations were being destroyed by something called Devourers, and these dying aliens were sending warnings about ancient protectors that needed to be awakened. "Carl, have you ever heard of anything like this in the xenological databases?" Jake asked. Dr. Banks shook his head slowly. "Nothing like this. There are legends among some of the older alien races about machine intelligences that consumed worlds long ago, but they were considered myths, ancient stories told to frighten children." "These don't sound like myths," Lisa said quietly. She was still monitoring the frequencies, but fewer signals were coming through. "Jake, I think we're listening to the end of multiple civilizations." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Lisa, record everything. Every signal, every translation, every piece of data. Carl, I want you to analyze what they're saying about these ancient protectors and sleeping giants. We're taking this to Earth Command." "You think they'll believe us?" Carl asked. "They have to. Something is destroying entire star systems out there, and apparently there's something that can stop it, something that's sleeping." 3 days later, Jake stood in the briefing room of Earth Defense Command in Geneva. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat at the head of a long table surrounded by officials from every major nation. The room's holographic displays showed the data from Cerberus Prime. Along with Carl's analysis of the alien warnings, Director Paul Martinez of the American sector leaned back in his chair with obvious skepticism. "Commander Morrison, you're asking us to believe that some ancient enemy is destroying civilizations thousands of light years away, and that there are mysterious guardians that can stop them? Sir, the evidence is clear. We've recorded the death signals of at least 15 different civilizations. The translations all mention the same things: devourers, ancient machines, and some kind of protective force that needs to be awakened, Admiral. Sullivan studied the data streams on her tablet. Dr. Banks, what's your assessment of these transmissions? Could they be hoaxes or some kind of natural phenomenon? Carl stepped forward. Admiral, the linguistic patterns are too complex to be artificial. These are genuine alien languages, and the desperation in their voices is real. Whatever is happening out there, it's causing the complete destruction of spacefaring civilizations. Director Martinez laughed harshly. Even if this is real, what? Does it have to do with Earth? We're in a quiet arm of the galaxy, far from whatever might be happening in Andromeda. Our defensive satellites and lunar bases are sufficient for any realistic threat. But sir, Jake interrupted, the warnings specifically mention something about awakening protectors. What if these aliens know something about Earth that we don't? Commander, you're suggesting that ancient alien guardians are somehow connected to our planet? That's science fiction nonsense. Martinez turned to the other officials. I recommend we classify this as an interesting xenological discovery, but take no defensive action. Our resources are better spent on realistic threats. Admiral Sullivan looked around the table. All in favor of maintaining current defense postures? Most hands rose. Motion carried. Commander Morrison, continue monitoring these signals, but Earth defense will not be increasing alert status based on ancient alien legends. Jake felt frustration burn in his chest, but he saluted properly. Yes, ma'am. As the meeting ended, Admiral Sullivan approached him privately. Jake, I want you to know that I'm taking this seriously, even if the politicians aren't. Keep monitoring, and if anything changes, contact me directly. 2 weeks later, Jake received the transmission that would prove the warnings were not just ancient legends. Scout ship pilot Ryan Webb was 3 days into a routine survey mission in the outer system when his sensors detected something massive moving beyond Pluto's orbit. He activated his ship's long-range cameras and watched in growing horror. As geometric structures the size of cities drifted silently through space, the objects were clearly artificial, made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. They moved in perfect formation, heading steadily toward the inner solar system. Ryan counted at least 50 of the massive constructs before his ship's proximity alarms began screaming. One of the structures had noticed him. Ryan's ship shook as some kind of scanning beam swept over it. His instruments went crazy, showing energy readings beyond anything human technology could produce. Then, without warning, smaller craft began launching from the massive structures. Heading directly toward him, Ryan hit the emergency jump drive and fled toward Earth, his ship's engines pushed to their absolute limit. Behind him, the scanner showed the alien craft pursuing but gradually falling behind. Whatever those things were, they were fast, but not quite fast enough to catch a human. Scout ship at full acceleration. When Ryan finally reached Cerberus Prime, he was shaking and could barely speak coherently. Jake helped him dock and brought him straight to the communication center. Commander, they're real. The things the aliens warned us about. I saw them, huge machines moving through space like they own it. They scanned my ship and tried to catch me. They're coming toward Earth. Jake looked at the footage Ryan had managed to record. The images showed massive, angular structures unlike anything humans had ever built. They moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of intelligence behind their construction. How many did you count? Jake asked. At least 50 of the big ones, but, Commander, I think there are more behind them. This might just be the advance force. Jake activated the emergency communication system and sent a priority message directly to Admiral Sullivan. The message was simple but carried the weight of humanity's future. The warnings were real. They're coming. As the transmission raced toward Earth, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered if humanity would have time to find whatever ancient protectors the dying aliens had spoken of. Somewhere out there, massive machine intelligences were approaching Earth, and all they had were the desperate warnings of extinct civilizations and legends about sleeping guardians that might not even exist. Dr. Amy Foster stared at the equations covering every wall of her laboratory. For 3 weeks, she had been studying the alien transmissions that Commander Morrison had sent from Cerberus Prime. The dying civilizations had included more than just warnings in their final messages. Hidden within the audio patterns were mathematical sequences that seemed to point to specific locations. Amy pushed her glasses up and rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working for 18 hours straight, but the breakthrough felt close. The numbers were coordinates, she was certain of that. The coordinates to what, Dr. Foster? Luke Harrison knocked on her lab door. The young cryptographer had been helping her decode the alien mathematics for the past week. I think I've found something important. Amy waved him in. Luke carried a tablet displaying a 3-dimensional map of Earth with several points marked. In red, the coordinate sequences from the alien signals all point to locations on our planet. Look at this pattern. The red dots were scattered across the globe, one in the Sahara Desert, another in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a third buried under the Antarctic ice sheet, and 4 more in remote mountain ranges and deep ocean trenches. These can't be random, Amy said, studying the map. The aliens specifically mentioned these locations before they died. They called them guardian sites. Luke nodded excitedly. That's not all. I ran geological surveys on these coordinates. Every single location shows massive underground structures that don't match natural formation patterns. Something artificial is buried at each site, and it's been there for thousands of years. Amy felt her heart racing. The dying aliens had told them to find the sleeping protectors. What if those protectors were right here on Earth, waiting to be discovered? She grabbed her phone and called Admiral Sullivan directly. Admiral, we need to start digging, now. 6 days later, the first excavation team reached the buried structure in the Sahara Desert. Captain Steve Rodriguez led a combined team of archaeologists, engineers, and military specialists as they carefully removed centuries of sand from what appeared to be a metallic dome buried 30 feet underground. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a football stadium. Its surface was made of some unknown metal that showed no signs of rust or decay despite being buried for millennia. Strange symbols covered the surface, glowing faintly with blue light as the excavation exposed them to air. This is incredible, whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead archaeologist. The metal composition is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's as if it was designed to last forever. Captain Rodriguez approached the structure's main entrance, a massive door covered in the same glowing symbols. As he got closer, the symbols began pulsing brighter. Something's responding to our presence, he reported over his radio. Proceed. With caution, Captain, Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth Command. Remember, this might be connected to whatever's heading toward our solar system. Rodriguez reached out and touched the door. The moment his hand made contact, the symbols flared with brilliant light. Ancient mechanisms groaned to life, and the massive door began sliding open with a deep rumbling sound that shook the entire excavation site. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber carved from solid rock. Emergency lights flickered on automatically, revealing a space that stretched far beyond what should have been possible given the external size of the structure. In the center of the chamber stood something that made every person present stop breathing. It was a giant dot. The figure stood over 300 feet tall, humanoid in shape, but clearly mechanical. Its armor was the same unknown metal as the structure, covered in intricate designs that seemed to flow like living art. The giant's face was hidden behind a helm that resembled ancient warrior masks, and its eyes were dark and lifeless. My God, Rodriguez whispered. It's exactly what the aliens described, a sleeping guardian. Around the chamber's walls, holographic displays suddenly activated. Star maps appeared, showing the positions of planets and the movement of massive objects through space. The displays clearly showed the Devourer fleet approaching Earth's solar system. Captain, are you seeing this? Admiral Sullivan's voice was tense with excitement and fear. Yes, ma'am, it looks like a command center. The displays are tracking the alien fleet that Scout Webb reported. Rodriguez moved deeper into the chamber, his team following carefully behind. Near the base of the giant figure, they found a raised platform with what appeared to be control interfaces. The technology was completely alien yet somehow familiar, as if it had been designed with human users in mind. Technician Beth Collins was the first to approach the control platform. She was known for her steady nerves and technical expertise, which was why Rodriguez had brought her on the team. As she climbed the steps to the platform, the giant's head moved slightly, tracking her movement. Everyone froze. "It's watching me," Beth said quietly. "The head just turned to follow me." "Collins, get away from there," Rodriguez ordered. "No, wait, look at the displays. They're showing me something." The holographic star maps had changed. Now they showed Earth surrounded by 7 glowing points, each marked with the same symbols they had found on the structure's door. As Beth watched, the displays began showing tactical information about the approaching Devourer fleet, including their weapons capabilities and estimated arrival time. 18 days, Beth read from the displays. "The fleet will reach Earth in 18 days." She looked up at the giant's dark face mask. Something told her that this ancient guardian was waiting for her to make a choice. The control interface pulsed gently, inviting her to touch it. "Admiral, I think this machine wants me to activate it," Beth reported. "Absolutely not, Collins. We don't know what it might do." But Beth was studying the displays more carefully. The tactical information showed Earth's current defenses against the Devourer fleet. The assessment was clear: humanity's weapons would be completely ineffective. Their satellites, ships, and missile systems were like toys compared to the alien technology approaching them. "Admiral, our defenses won't work. According to this analysis, the Devourers will destroy everything we have within hours of arriving. This Guardian might be our only chance." Rodriguez approached the platform. Collins stepped back. "If anyone's going to risk activating this thing, it should be me." "No, Captain, look at the interface. It's responding to me specifically. I think it's designed to bond with one person." The displays around the chamber changed again. Now they showed images of the other 6 locations that Dr. Foster had identified. Each site contained a similar chamber with its own guardian. The displays made it clear that all 7 guardians needed to be activated to have any chance against the Devourer fleet. Beth looked at the control interface one more time. The metal surface was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. She could feel the ancient machine's awareness focusing on her, waiting for her decision. Going to do it," she announced. "Collins, no." Rodriguez shouted, but Beth had already placed her hands on the control interface. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Energy surged through her body as the ancient systems connected directly with her nervous system. Beth's consciousness expanded as the Guardian's artificial intelligence merged with her thoughts. She could suddenly see the entire solar system as if through the Guardian's sensors. Feel the approaching Devourer fleet like a cold presence moving through space. The giant's eyes blazed to life with blue fire around the world. Seismic sensors detected similar activations at the other 6 sites. In the Pacific Ocean, a massive form stirred beneath the waves. In Antarctica, something vast began moving under miles of ice. In mountain caves and ocean trenches, ancient guardians opened their eyes for the first time in thousands of years. Beth, still connected to the interface, found herself accessing memories that weren't her own. She saw the Guardian's history, understood its purpose. These machines had been built by an advanced human civilization that existed long before recorded history. They had faced the Devourers before and survived by creating these protectors. "Admiral," Beth said, her voice strange and echoing strangely through the communication system. "I understand now. These Guardians were built by our ancestors. Humans created them to protect Earth from the Devourers. We're not just random survivors. We're the inheritors of an ancient defense system." The giant began to move. Its massive arms flexed as systems that had slept for millennia came back online. The chamber filled with the sound of machinery awakening, power cores charging, and weapon systems initializing. The other Guardians are waking up too, Beth continued. I can feel them connecting to the network. 7 Guardians, 7 pilots. We're going to need volunteers. Rodriguez stared up at the giant as it took its first step in thousands of years. The ground shook with the weight of the massive machine, but it moved with surprising grace and precision. Admiral, Rodriguez reported, the Guardian is active and under Collins' control. She seems to have complete neural interface with the machine. And Admiral, this thing is armed with weapons that make our nuclear arsenal look like firecrackers. Admiral. Sullivan's voice came through the radio with a mixture of awe and determination. Colonel Dan Parker stood in the transport helicopter as it approached the Sahara excavation site. Through the window, he could see the massive form of the Guardian rising from the ancient chamber like a metal mountain. The machine stood perfectly still, its blue eyes scanning the horizon as if watching for threats that only it could detect. Dan had been chosen as Beth Collins' replacement after the initial neural connection had proved too much for her civilian nervous system. The doctors said she would recover, but the Guardian needed a military pilot, someone trained to handle extreme stress and combat situations. Colonel, you sure about this? Asked Dr. Amy Foster, who had flown out to oversee the pilot transfer. We still don't fully understand how the neural interface works. Beth was unconscious for 6 hours after disconnecting. Don checked his equipment one more time. He had volunteered for this mission because he understood what was at stake. 16 days remained before the Devourer fleet reached Earth, and humanity needed every Guardian operational. Doc, I've been flying experimental aircraft for 15 years. How different can this be? The helicopter landed near the chamber entrance. Don could feel the Guardian's presence even from a distance, like standing next to a massive power plant. The machine seemed to be waiting for him. Its head turned slightly in his direction. Inside the chamber, the control platform hummed with energy. The holographic displays showed constant updates on the approaching alien fleet, now clearly visible. To Earth's deep space telescopes, the enemy ships looked like geometric nightmares, dark angular shapes that seemed to absorb light as they moved through space. The neural interface is ready, Colonel, reported Dr. Kim, the lead technician. And just remember, the moment you make contact, you'll be sharing consciousness with a machine intelligence that's thousands of years old. Stay focused on your own identity. Don climbed the platform steps and placed his hands on the control interface. The effect was immediate but different from what Beth had described. Instead of overwhelming energy, Dan felt a sense of recognition. As if the Guardian had been waiting specifically for him, his consciousness expanded. Suddenly, he could feel every system in the massive machine, from the fusion reactors in its chest to the complex weapons arrays built into its arms. The Guardian's name appeared in his mind. Atlas, it had been built for heavy combat. Designed to anchor defensive lines and destroy the largest enemy targets. Dan opened his eyes, but now he was seeing through Atlas's optical sensors. The world looked different at 300 feet tall. He could see for miles across the desert, detect heat signatures from aircraft 50 miles away, and sense electromagnetic signatures from satellites in orbit. Atlas is online, Don reported, his voice now broadcasting through both his throat and the Guardian's external speakers. I have complete motor control and weapons access. He took a careful step forward. The ground shook, but Atlas moved with surprising grace. The ancient engineers had designed the machine to be agile, despite its enormous size. Don tested the Guardian's arm movements, then activated its flight systems. Massive energy wings materialized from Atlas's back, glowing with the same blue fire as its eyes. Colonel, we're getting reports from the other sites. Dr. Foster's voice came through the communication system. 5 more Guardians are now active with their pilots. The Pacific Unit has bonded with Commander Ellen Brooks from the Navy. The Antarctic Guardian chose Captain Rick Stone from the Arctic Research Division. Don felt a new sensation as the other Guardians came online. He could sense their presence like distant voices in his consciousness. The Guardian network was connecting, allowing the pilots to share tactical information instantly. Atlas, this is Leviathan. Ellen Brooks' voice came directly into Dan's mind through the Guardian network. I'm operational and ready for deployment. My sensors show the enemy fleet has accelerated. They'll be here in 14 days, not 16, confirmed Leviathan. Atlas standing by for combat orders. The first test of the Guardians came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days later, scout pilot Ryan Webb detected a small advance force of Devourer ships entering the outer solar system. The enemy had sent a reconnaissance group ahead of their main fleet, probably to assess Earth's defenses. Admiral Sullivan. Authorized immediate deployment. All Guardians, you are cleared for space combat. Consider this a live fire exercise. Don felt Atlas's system surge with power as the Guardian prepared for his first battle in thousands of years. The flight systems engaged, and Atlas rose from the desert floor like a metal angel. Around the world, 6 other Guardians launched. Simultaneously, their energy signatures blazing across the sky, the flight to the outer system took 3 hours. Atlas's propulsion systems allowed it to accelerate far beyond what any human spacecraft could achieve. Don found himself thinking in perfect synchronization with the ancient machine, their consciousness blending seamlessly during the high-speed flight. Enemy contact, Ellen reported from Leviathan. I count 6 Devourer ships, each roughly the size of a city block. They're scanning the asteroid belt, probably looking for resources to harvest. Through Atlas's sensors, Dan could see the alien ships clearly. They were dark, angular constructs that seemed to bend light around them. Their hulls bristled with weapons and mining equipment designed to tear apart planets and convert the matter into more war machines. All Guardians, engage at will. Admiral Sullivan's voice reached them through the military communication network. Show them what Earth's defenders can do. Don targeted the largest Devourer ship and activated Atlas's primary weapon system. The Guardian's right arm transformed, revealing a massive energy cannon that had been hidden within the armor plating. The weapon charged with a sound like thunder, drawing power from Atlas's fusion cores. The energy blast that erupted from Atlas's cannon was brighter than a star. It crossed the distance to the Devourer ship in seconds and struck with the force of a nuclear explosion. The alien vessel's shields flared and failed, and the dark hull cracked like an eggshell, but the Devourers were not helpless. The remaining ships immediately turned toward the Guardians and opened fire with weapons that tore through space itself. Reality seemed to ripple around the energy beams as they lanced toward Atlas. Don felt the Guardians' defensive systems activate automatically. Energy shields materialized around Atlas, deflecting the worst of the alien fire. But the impact still staggered the massive machine, and Dan felt each hit like a physical blow. These things hit harder than our intelligence predicted, Rick, Stone reported from Glacier. The Antarctic Guardian specialized in defensive systems and was absorbing fire meant for the other units. My shields are holding, but barely. The battle became a deadly dance through the asteroid belt. The Guardians used their superior mobility to stay ahead of the Devourer weapons while striking back with everything they had. Ellen's Leviathan proved especially effective, using its aquatic design systems to navigate through the asteroid. Feeled like a fish through water. Don found himself working in perfect coordination with the other pilots. The Guardian network allowed them to share targeting data, coordinate attacks, and cover each other's weaknesses. When 2 Devourer ships tried to flank Atlas, Maria Santos and Amazon was already there to intercept them. The turning point came when Tom Bradley's Goliath managed to breach one of the Devourer ships' hulls. Inside, the Guardian sensors revealed the horrifying truth about their enemies. The ships were filled with mechanical beings that had once been organic creatures. The Devourers had converted themselves into machines, abandoning their biological forms in pursuit of immortality. They're not just using machines, Tom reported, his voice shaken by what he had seen. They are the machines now. Every Devourer unit used to be a living being. The revelation made the battle more urgent. If the Devourers reached Earth, they wouldn't just destroy humanity. They would convert everyone into more mechanical soldiers for their endless war against life itself. Don coordinated the final assault. All 7 Guardians focused their fire on the remaining Devourer ships simultaneously. The combined energy discharge was visible from Earth as a brilliant flash in the night sky. When the light faded, the alien reconnaissance force had been completely destroyed, but the victory came with a sobering realization. The battle had pushed all the Guardians to their limits, and they had only faced 6 enemy ships. Intelligence reports showed that the main Devourer fleet contained thousands of vessels, including fortress ships larger than anything they had just fought. Atlas to Earth Command, Don reported as the Guardians began their flight home. Mission accomplished, but we're going to need a bigger plan. The enemy main force will be here in 11 days, and they're bringing enough firepower to crack planets. Admiral Sullivan's response was grim but determined. Acknowledged, Atlas. We'll use the time to prepare. You've proven the Guardians can fight these things. Now we need to figure out how to win a war. As Atlas descended through Earth's atmosphere, Dan could see the lights of cities spread out below. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that their survival now depended on 7 ancient machines and the pilots brave enough to merge their consciousness with them. 3 months into the war, Colonel Dan Parker barely recognized himself in the mirror. The constant neural connection with Atlas had changed him. His eyes held the same blue glow as the Guardian's sensors, and he could feel the massive machine's presence even when disconnected. The bond between pilot and Guardian had grown stronger with each battle, but it was taking its toll on all 7 pilots. The Devourer main fleet had arrived exactly when predicted, bringing horrors beyond human imagination. Thousands of dark ships filled the outer solar system, each one larger and more deadly than the reconnaissance force the Guardians had destroyed. The enemy had learned from that first encounter and sent specialized hunter units designed specifically to kill Guardians. Don stood in the Mars Operations Center, studying holographic displays that showed the current battle situation. The Red Planet had become the front line of the war. Its colonies had been evacuated, and now massive mechanized armies clashed across the Martian surface while space battles raged in orbit above. Atlas, we've got movement in Sector 7, Ellen Brooks reported through the Guardian network. Her voice carried exhaustion that all the pilots felt. Leviathan was currently stationed underwater in one of Mars' ancient ocean basins. Using its aquatic systems to move unseen beneath the planetary surface, Don activated Atlas's long-range sensors and immediately spotted the threat. A new type of Devourer unit was approaching, something they hadn't seen before. It looked like a mechanical spider the size of a skyscraper, with multiple arms ending in weapons specifically designed to tear apart Guardian armor. That's a hunter-killer, warned Dr. Amy Foster from the Tactical Command Center. Her analysis of captured Devourer technology had revealed that the enemy was adapting their designs based on each Guardian encounter. It's built to counter Atlas's heavy combat systems. Dawn felt Atlas's weapon systems coming online automatically. The Guardian's artificial intelligence was millions of years old and had fought the Devourers before, but even it seemed concerned about this new enemy design. Leviathan, can you flank it from the underground caverns? Dawn asked Ellen through their neural link. Already moving. Give me 3 minutes to get into position. The spider machine detected Atlas and immediately began its attack. Instead of the energy weapons the Guardians had faced before, this hunter used physical projectiles designed to pierce Guardian armor. Massive harpoons fired from its arm weapons, trailing cables that could entangle and disable a Guardian's limbs. Dan dodged the first volley, using Atlas's flight systems to stay mobile. The Guardian's energy wings blazed as it maneuvered around the mechanical spider's attacks, but the enemy was learning, adjusting its targeting with each shot that missed. Atlas, behind you. Tom Bradley's voice cut through the Guardian network. Goliath was engaged with its own hunter 3 miles away, but had spotted a second spider machine approaching Atlas from the rear. Dan spun Atlas around and fired the Guardian's shoulder-mounted missile systems. The projectile struck the second hunter and exploded, but the machine's armor absorbed most of the damage. These new enemy units were specifically designed to resist Guardian weapons. The battle became a deadly chase across the Martian landscape. Atlas used its superior speed to stay ahead of the hunters while Ellen maneuvered Leviathan into position for a surprise attack. The coordination between Guardians had become perfect over months of fighting, their consciousness linked so closely that they could predict each other's actions. Now, Ellen shouted through the network. Leviathan erupted from an underground river channel, water streaming from its aquatic armor as it tackled the first hunter from below. The mechanical spider's legs tangled with Leviathan's arms as both massive machines crashed into a Martian mountain range. Don used the distraction to focus on the second hunter. Atlas's energy cannon charged to full power, drawing so much energy from the Guardian's fusion cores that warning alarms echoed through Dan's consciousness. The blast that followed carved a canyon through the Martian surface and vaporized the spider machine completely, but victory came at a cost. Ellen's mental scream cut through the Guardian network as Leviathan's left arm was severed by the first hunter's cutting weapons. The neural feedback hit all 7 pilots simultaneously, and Don felt Ellen's pain as if it were his own. "Leviathan is down," Rick Stone reported from Glacier. The Antarctic Guardian was 30 miles away but immediately changed course to assist. Ellen's vital signs are critical. Don felt a cold rage building in his consciousness shared between himself and Atlas. The Guardian's ancient programming included protective instincts for its fellow machines, and seeing Leviathan damaged triggered responses that had been dormant for millennia. Atlas's weapon systems reconfigured themselves, drawing on combat protocols that predated human civilization. New weapons emerged from hidden compartments in the Guardian's armor, technology so advanced that even Dr. Foster's analysis teams hadn't discovered it. The energy beam that Atlas fired at the remaining hunter didn't just destroy the machine. It completely disintegrated every atom in the target, leaving only empty space where the spider machine had stood. The weapon's power consumption was enormous, forcing Atlas to shut down non-essential systems to avoid core overload. "What was that?" Dr. Foster's voice came through the communication system, filled with amazement and concern. "Emergency protocols," Don replied, still feeling the weapon's destructive power echoing through his nervous system. "Atlas has combat systems that activate when other Guardians are threatened." The battle for Mars continued for 6 more hours. All 7 Guardians fought desperately to hold the line against wave after wave of Devourer forces. The enemy was throwing everything they had at the Red Planet, trying to establish a foothold in the inner solar system. Captain Rick Stone's condition grew worse as the battle progressed. Glacier's defensive systems were taking massive punishment, and the neural strain was overwhelming Stone's nervous system. During the final assault, his Guardian began moving erratically as Stone lost consciousness inside the neural interface. "Glacier's pilot is unresponsive," reported Maria Santos from Amazon. "The Guardian is operating on automatic, but it's not coordinating with our tactics." Don made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of the war. "All Guardians fall back to defensive positions around Glacier. We protect Stone until medical teams can reach him." The withdrawal allowed Devourer forces to advance across half of Mars, but it saved Rick Stone's life. When the medical teams finally extracted him from Glacier's neural interface, he was in a coma that would last for weeks. "The neural strain is affecting all of you," Dr. Kim warned during the post-battle medical examination. "Extended combat is damaging your nervous systems." The Guardians weren't designed for pilots with human limitations. Don knew she was right. He could feel the changes in his own mind, thoughts that belonged to Atlas mixing with his human consciousness. Sometimes he forgot which memories were his own and which came from the ancient machine, but the war was far from over. Intelligence reports showed that the main Devourer fleet was preparing for a final assault on Earth itself. The enemy had learned that they couldn't simply overwhelm the Guardians with numbers. They were building something new, a weapon specifically designed to destroy Guardian technology. "We've detected massive construction activity in the asteroid belt," Admiral Sullivan reported during the strategy briefing. "The Devourers are building some kind of fortress platform. Our long-range scans show it's the size of a small moon." Ellen Brooks, still recovering from her injuries but determined to continue fighting, studied the reconnaissance data. It's a staging ground for their final attack. They're going to use it as a base to coordinate their assault on Earth. Don felt Atlas's tactical systems analyzing the enemy construction. The Guardians' ancient intelligence recognized the threat immediately. It's a command nexus, he reported. The Devourers are centralizing their control systems. If we can destroy it, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet. Admiral Sullivan looked around the briefing room at the 7 Guardian pilots. Rick Stone was still unconscious, but the others showed the strain of months of continuous combat. Can the Guardians handle an assault on something that large? Don exchanged glances with his fellow pilots through both their human eyes and the Guardian network. They all knew this would be the most dangerous mission of the war. The enemy nexus would be heavily defended, and they would be fighting at the heart of the Devourer fleet. We'll need all 7 Guardians operating at maximum capacity, Ellen said quietly. That means Rick has to recover enough to pilot Glacier. I'll be ready, Rick Stone's weak voice came from the medical bay's intercom. System. He had awakened just in time to hear the briefing. Glacier and I aren't sitting out the final battle. Don felt a mixture of pride and fear as he looked at his fellow pilots. They had been through hell together, sharing consciousness through the Guardian network until they were more like family than fellow soldiers. The thought of losing any of them in the final assault was almost unbearable, but they also knew that Earth's survival depended on their success. The Devourer Nexus represented the enemy's last major strategic advantage. Operation Daybreak is authorized, Admiral Sullivan and Colonel Dan Parker felt Atlas trembling beneath him as they approached the Devourer Nexus. The enemy construction was even more massive than the reconnaissance reports had suggested. It stretched across space like a metal planet, its surface, covered with weapons platforms, manufacturing facilities, and docking bays for thousands of enemy ships. Holy God, whispered Ellen Brooks through the Guardian network, it's the size of our moon. The 7 Guardians flew in formation through the asteroid belt, their energy signatures barely visible against the backdrop of space. They had spent 3 days planning this assault, knowing it would likely be their final battle. The Nexus represented the Devourer fleet's command center, and destroying it was humanity's only hope of winning the war. All Guardians, maintain radio silence until we reach the infiltration point, Don commanded through their neural link. Speaking aloud would risk detection by the enemy's scanning systems, but the Guardian network allowed instant communication. Between pilots, Rick Stone's presence felt weak in the network. Glacier's pilot had recovered enough to fight, but everyone could sense the damage the neural strain had caused. His thoughts sometimes drifted, mixing memories of the Guardian's ancient battles with his own human experiences. I can hold together. Long enough for this mission, Rick assured them, though his mental voice wavered with exhaustion. The Nexus grew larger as they approached, revealing details that made Dan's heart sink. The structure wasn't just a weapons platform. It was a factory constantly producing new Devourer units from harvested matter. Streams of raw materials flowed into massive processing centers, while completed warships emerged from construction. Bays like insects from a hive. Target acquired, reported Tom Bradley from Goliath. The heavy assault Guardian had identified the Nexus's central core, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with energy at the heart of the artificial planetoid. That's got to be their command center. Maria Santos, piloting Amazon through the asteroid field with predatory grace, spotted the first line of defenses. Guardian killers, 12 o'clock. They're waiting for us. Dozens of the spider-like hunter machines hung motionless in space around the Nexus, their sensors sweeping constantly for any sign of Guardian energy signatures. The enemy had learned from every previous battle and was ready for this assault. Lisa, can Phantom get us past their detection grid? Don asked through the network. Lisa Chun's Guardian specialized in stealth and electronic warfare. Phantoms. Systems could bend light and energy around itself, making it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. I can mask our approach, but only for a few minutes. Once we start shooting, They'll know exactly where we are. That's all we need. Everyone ready? 6 confirmations echoed through the Guardian network. Despite months of continuous combat and the neural strain that was slowly destroying their minds, the pilots were united in their determination to end the war. Phantom's stealth field expanded to cover all 7 Guardians as they accelerated toward the Nexus. Lisa's consciousness guided the energy distortion with incredible precision, bending sensor waves around the massive machines as they flew deeper into enemy territory. The first line of hunter-killers never detected them. The Guardians passed through the defensive grid like ghosts, their energy signatures hidden by Phantom's advanced camouflage systems. But as they approached the Nexus's outer hull, Dan spotted something that changed everything. There are organic life signs inside. That structure, he reported, his voice tight with shock. Thousands of them? Ellen's sensors confirmed the readings. They're not just machine intelligences. The Devourers are keeping biological beings alive inside the Nexus. Dr. Amy Foster's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. Command, that's impossible. All intelligence indicates the Devourers convert organic life into mechanical units. Not convert, Rick Stone said quietly, his damaged mind somehow understanding what the others had missed. Harvest. They're not just taking our matter. They're taking our consciousness, our souls. Those life signs are prisoners. The revelation hit all 7 pilots simultaneously. The beings trapped inside the Nexus weren't just captured aliens. They were the consciousness of every civilization the Devourers had consumed, kept alive to power the enemy's artificial intelligence systems. We can't destroy the Nexus, Maria said through the network. We'd be killing billions of innocent minds. Dawn felt Atlas's ancient programming responding to this new information. The Guardian's original mission wasn't just to destroy the Devourers. It was to protect all organic life in the galaxy. The machine's consciousness recoiled at the thought of causing a genocide, even to win the war. New plan, Dawn announced. We infiltrate the Nexus and find a way to free the trapped consciousness. Then we destroy the command systems from the inside. Dawn, that's suicide, Ellen protested. Even if we get inside, we'll be trapped with no way out. Then we make sure our sacrifice counts. The Guardians altered course, heading for what appeared to be a maintenance bay on the Nexus's surface. Lisa's stealth field held until they were actually touching the enemy structure, then collapsed as Phantom systems overloaded from the strain. Alarms immediately began wailing throughout the Nexus. Emergency lights bathed the artificial planetoid in red illumination as thousands of hunter-killers activated and began converging on the Guardian's position. So much for stealth, Tom muttered as Goliath's heavy weapons came online. The battle was immediate and brutal. Hunter-killers swarmed around the Guardians like mechanical hornets, their weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Guardian armor. But the pilots had learned from months of combat, and their coordination through the neural network was perfect. Atlas punched through the Nexus's outer hull with raw physical force, its armored fists tearing through metal that had withstood asteroid impacts. Behind him, the other Guardians formed a protective formation, covering their entry point while fighting off waves of enemy defenders. Inside the Nexus, the Guardians discovered a nightmare beyond human imagination. The corridors were lined with organic neural tissue, pulsing with the trapped consciousness of millions of beings. The Devourers had turned their victims into living computers, using their minds to power the enemy fleet's artificial intelligence. This is monstrous, Alex Turner said through the network. His Guardian, Fortress, specialized in defensive systems and was leading the formation through the Nexus's twisted interior. The trapped minds seemed to sense the Guardian's presence. Whispers echoed through the neural link, desperate voices speaking in hundreds of different languages. They were begging for release, for an end to their endless torment. At the heart of the Nexus, the Guardians found the Devourer Prime. It wasn't a machine at all, but a massive organic brain kept alive by mechanical life support systems. This was the original consciousness that had started the Devourer Plague, the first being to choose mechanical immortality over natural death. So you've finally come, The Prime spoke directly into their minds, its voice like the whisper of dying stars. The descendants of those who refused our gift. You could have joined us willingly. Instead, you chose to fight. Dan felt Atlas's ancient memories stirring. The Guardian had faced this entity before in battles that predated human civilization. Your gift is poison, you turn life into slavery. We offer immortality. Freedom from pain, from death, from the weakness of organic existence. Your ancestors were fools to refuse us. Our ancestors chose to remain human, Ellen replied, Leviathan's weapons charging for the final assault. They chose to stay alive, not just to exist. The Prime's mechanical defenses activated, filling the chamber with energy weapons and defensive barriers. But the Guardians were no longer fighting just for Earth. They were fighting for every consciousness trapped within the Nexus. Every civilization that had been consumed by the Devourer Plague. The battle was unlike anything they had faced before. The Prime could manipulate the Nexus itself, turning corridors into weapons and using the trapped minds as shields. But the Guardians fought with a unity born from months of shared consciousness. Their movements perfectly coordinated through the neural network. The turning point came when Rick Stone, despite his weakened condition, found a way to communicate with the trapped minds. Glacier's systems interfaced directly with the Nexus's neural networks, offering the imprisoned consciousness a choice: remain enslaved or help destroy their captors. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of minds turned against the Devourer systems, sabotaging weapons and disrupting defenses. The Prime's control over the Nexus began to collapse as its own victims rebelled. "This is impossible," the Prime shrieked as its defenses crumbled. They chose immortality. They chose to join us. They chose freedom, Don replied as Atlas raised its fist for the final blow. They chose to die free rather than live as slaves. Atlas's fist crashed into the Prime's core with the force of a falling mountain. The ancient evil that had plagued the galaxy for millions of years finally died, its mechanical heart crushed by humanity's determination to protect all life. The Nexus began to collapse around them. As the Prime died, its control over the Devourer fleet failed completely. Throughout the solar system, enemy ships went dark and drifted powerless through space.